Welcome to the Suspense Horror Sci-Fi screening number 2 of the Filmmaker Q&A. I am your host, Nancy Morrow. I'm the Executive Director of the McMellen Short Film Festival, and I'm excited to welcome these filmmakers with us today to talk about their films that you just watched. You don't want to hear from me, so let's just dive in. Jeffrey, let's start with you. You're joining us today from Los Angeles, and you're the writer of Mise. Tell us about your film and what that topic means. It's one of those terms we've heard a lot, but what does it mean?
In Mise, so the basis of the film is everybody's heard horror stories of actresses on auditions, and basically mise en scène is a French term of put into the scene, and we just wanted to kind of tell this horror story of these women who have aspirations to being actresses, putting themselves in these situations, not on purpose, but with the Me Too movement and all that stuff, we're kind of depicting there is a horror side of these things. And strangely enough, while we were filming, all the actresses we actually cast were telling us their horror stories of auditions, and it was like, yeah, it just hit the zeitgeist, I guess. I'm gonna start rambling in a minute because I think I've had too much wine, but yeah, mise en scène, it was an idea that came to us. How do we show the horror of it without exploiting it? And I hope we got that across.
I think you did. What I liked about it is your main character, Allison, if I recall the name, we, the audience, are on her journey with her. So we're excited for her when she walks in that lobby. We're excited for her when she walks into the audition, but then we're kind of feeling her terror as she's starting to realize this is not what she signed up for. So I think it does capture that, but it did feel more like an interview than an audition, though, too.
Yeah, one of the surprising things when we were writing, and again when we got some of the horror stories, the actress who was the creepy receptionist. She's an Aussie, a friend of mine named Sophie, and she was telling us that she went on an audition once. It was actually some guy setting up blind dates for himself. And so when she told us that story, we tried to kind of re-angle it to where it wasn't like an actual audition, and it was something like they know it's wrong, but they don't know what to do about it. And so that was just kind of organically came from some of their stories, which again still creeps me out. So we've actually changed how we audition because SAG passed the new rules of not in homes and whatever, and so we've adjusted to adhere to that. Because at the time we had the casting couch. You come over, you audition in the living room or whatever. We'd always have female filmmakers there for comfort, but making this movie was kind of an eye opener in a way that we didn't intend for ourselves. If that makes sense.
It does. And being the movie geek that I am, I have to ask, are the posters in the background in the lobby, are those your other films? Because your name is on them.
Yeah, the one of them is fake and was meant to kind of push the terror of the situation, but the ones that are behind the creepy receptionists, those are actual other films we've made.
Okay, fair enough. Sarah Young joins us from New York. She is an Oregon girl, so we welcome her back virtually to Oregon. Sarah, your film, In Case We Get Found, in your bio, you talk about your father was teaching at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, which is a few hours south of us. And in 2015, there was a school shooting there, and it left 10 people dead and 8 injured. And you talked about this film came from that. Talk to us about that.
Well, obviously, that was a really impactful moment for a lot of people, including my father and including myself. I was able to go and be with him in the aftermath. So I spent a lot of time at home and in my community during that time. And it was very, very transformative in a lot of ways. And I kind of carried that with me over the years. And when I started getting interested in film, I wanted to make a film that had something to do with gun violence or just making a film about impact. And a playwright friend of mine wrote a short play that was the basis of this film. And when I heard that script, I thought, this is perfect. This is about people in a terrible situation and how they deal. So I approached her, and she was willing to do some rewrites and let us run with it.
Yeah, one of the things, you describe it as a dark comedy, but in a shooting like that, I don't think we see humor in it. And yet, when you look back, you're thinking about the young woman who said, "I'm putting lipstick on because I want to look good if they find me," and it seems really ridiculous, and you laugh at that, but it's amazing what your mind does when you're in a traumatic situation. Was that something that your dad shared with you, or that you learned from that particular shoot, that episode happened?
Yes. We didn't want, one of the things that appealed to me about this script is it wasn't about the horror of the shooting itself. It was about people waiting. And just on a personal note, my father was on campus and just about to start teaching when they got the word to lock down. And they spent 2 hours sitting in the dark, sitting on the floor, and they didn't know. They didn't know how serious it was. They didn't know if it was real. They didn't know what was happening. And yeah, conversations with him. It was a very odd and strange and long conversation. There was some laughter, there was some denial, there was some aggression, there were some plans, and when I read this script by Emily, I recognized a lot of what my father had talked about. And I wanted to make this an examination of people in a terrible situation, obviously not specific to the Umpqua shooting, although I'm interested in pursuing something that's more specific about that event in the future. But this was sort of the beginning of me dipping my toe into using film to explore, sadly, what has become quite a common occurrence in our society.
It is, and I guess that's one of the things the pandemic has slowed down since the kids are not in school, which is really sad and heartbreaking. But no, I thought when you said that about this is more about the people and the waiting, even your end scene where they know someone has walked in, you intentionally do not reveal if it's the shooter or law enforcement because they don't know, they can't see, so we the viewers don't know. So I thought that was a really nice touch that you did too.
Thank you.
So Dan McMellen is joining us from The Garage. His film is The Garage, and you're joining us from Los Angeles, or where are you joining us from? Los Angeles. Well, welcome. So Dan, your film is definitely more dramatic than suspense, but it's got that dark brooding element to it. So we chose to put it in suspense because we just don't know where your one character is going to take us either at the same time. If I'm understanding correctly, it was based on a short story. And if so, how did you come about the story, and why this one to tell?
Well, basically it was from a family friend, and he was an older gentleman, and he'd been writing all of his life. He wanted to be a filmmaker back in college, but it just never happened for him. And he just became, just like a lot of people, just decided it wasn't for him. But he always loved creating and writing. And so over the years, he had been writing short stories and having them published in small places. And he always liked this one because it kind of had a throwback to like a Stephen King short story, like Stand By Me or one of those, or like Green Mile or those kind of things. And so he approached another family friend and said that he was his retirement money, and he wanted to take a little chunk of it and make a movie, but he didn't know how. And so that was his lifelong dream. And so he knew that I was a filmmaker and that my wife was a producer, and that we were looking for something different and interesting, and just, something that had that kind of Southern brooding kind of tone, and it was just kind of perfect. And so we all kind of got together, and, it's one of those times when things just kind of meshed together and it all kind of added up over time. And then, it just kind of fell into place. We shot in 3 days, and that was it.
The refrigerator is definitely a character in your film. And I've watched your film a couple of times, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of the refrigerator to begin with, but I started thinking, okay, it feels like the refrigerator's job is to balance good and evil in this world. And I'm sure there's many interpretations. Am I close?
It's like one of those things that, when I first read it, I kind of it took me back, but then I was like, it's interesting that it'll be fun to create a character out of it and let the audience decide what, kind of character it is, by sound and sound design for it, and just like having it become, you think angry, but you don't know because it's just sounds that it makes, but it's like it's creating a tone throughout the whole movie. And then at the end, it kind of, exacts its revenge without being a silly, kind of thing. It was just something that just happened. And, there is like physical things that happen in the scene that make you think, it makes it very, very ambiguous if it is the actual refrigerator or if it's like something else. And those are always fun things to play with.
Well, and the one thing that I felt like at the very end, where you have the refrigerator in the center of your shot and you're closing in on it, you have the narration, my brain went to, it was very Coen-esque. And it was almost like you were channeling Joel and Ethan Coen in that scene. It was really very beautifully shot. So I'm going to keep thinking about that refrigerator.
Yeah. Well, no, I really appreciate it. And I'm sure all the other filmmakers are like, wow, we're talking about a refrigerator. How cool.
That's the problem is, there's some fun things in every single film and we all have to understand what's in each one. So, well, speaking of Coen-esque, Lance Edmands is joining us from New York. And Lance, I've watched your film multiple times as well. And it just, every time I watch it, it makes me think of a Coen Brothers movie, especially Blood Simple. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Their early one where they're on the highway and that shot through the car and everything. So talk about your film, Whiteout.
Yeah. So in some ways, it really was inspired by a visual image that I had, which was this man standing in the middle of the road, lit up in headlights, snow swirling around him. And I sort of started with that kind of creepy, unsettling image. And I began to wonder what it could mean and where it could go. And I co-wrote the film with Sarah Tahani, who is my girlfriend and co-writer. And she also stars in the film as Lydia. And so her and I began to talk about this image that I had, and we started to debate what the man was there for. And my head went to, maybe he's a serial killer and he's going to come after him. And she said, oh, well, maybe he's just homeless and he needs help. And I sort of turned the conversation about what this script could be into the script itself, and that you have a couple arguing over what they think this man represents and their different interpretations of it. And I also had always wanted to make a short film that was a single shot. And this also presented itself with the perfect opportunity to do a one-shot movie because the camera is in the car with the protagonists. Kind of there's a third passenger in the vehicle. It's always just looking out the front windshield. And I thought that the idea of this couple who are in this nice warm car arguing about a man who's outside in the snow, not wearing any clothes and potentially freezing, and the kind of ideas about what the otherness and what that means when you're in a position of safety, and what it takes for you to break out of your safe space and go help someone, or whether you ultimately become kind of a selfish actor and look out for your own safety before anything else. So it kind of expanded into a lot of stuff that was going on in the world at that time. And, there were a lot of kind of like bigger, headier ideas that ended up finding their way into it as we thought through it. But it really just started with an image and then kind of like started becoming more and more complex as we developed the idea through the writing process.
Well, I think you're right on. I know my husband and I go through that ourselves. If we're driving somewhere, we each have a different interpretation of what something is. And your couple in this car definitely showed that, who is this man? And it sounds like we might not ever know who this person is standing or why or how, because it's out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, did you make him film out there in the cold winter without clothes on?
In fact, we did. The person we cast is a professional stuntman who my co-writer, Sarah, she had met him on a previous film as a stunt coordinator. And he had a really wily beard at the time and was just this kind of like ragged guy who really kind of lives for the adrenaline, as most stunt men do. And so we looked him up when it came time to cast this character, knowing that this was going to be a little bit of more of a physical role than a role for a quote unquote, thespian type actor. It was very much about physicality, and we needed someone who was tough, but also seemed like they could be scary, but also weak but it was all about that projection. And he kind of fit the bill perfectly. And he was just gung ho and game to get crazy and jump on the ground. And he brought his own kind of crash pad for the stunt that he does in it. And he was totally willing to, stand on the side of the road for 15 minutes while we went and set up our shot, and drove like a mile down the road so that we had the runway before we found him. So yeah, I mean, he was a tough guy, but that's what he does. So he was really into it.
Well, he did well. Well, and that was the other question I wanted to ask. Is this all filmed in one shot?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
In one shot.
It's very well done. So if we were in person, we would definitely get the question, what do you like best about filmmaking? So I'm going to ask each of you that question. Jeffrey, let's start with you. What's your favorite thing about being in the filmmaking world?
Well, I hate being on set with a passion. So I enjoy the writing process because it lets me drink and stay at home. But I do work as a producer. And so I'm forced to be on set a lot. But again, as a producer, if you're busy, that means something bad's happening usually. So I enjoy the development side of stories. But I actually don't like the filmmaking process at all. Sorry.
So you like creating the stories. You like the artistic side of things, and then turning it over to someone else.
Yeah, ideally, it's weird because we do shorts all the time, and the intent is that I never produce, but almost always I have to step in as a producer because something really bad's happening. But I did make my living doing that for a number of years, so I'm not terrible at it, but it's not something I like.
But nothing bad happened on this movie, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, everything bad happened on this movie. You name it. Like I said, we shot it in 2015. Post took 5 years, not because we were slow, but because something bad happened every step of the way, and it was ridiculous. We went through 2 post supervisors because one guy had left the project. Like, it was just taking so long, and we had sound issues, sound editing issues, music composer issues, actual editing issues, color issues, VFX issues. Like, it was never end. I almost quit a few times. I was just done with it over the years. Like, we shot in 2015. We didn't finish it until early last year, and it was just, I was ready to throw in the towel many, many, many times. But at the same time, it wasn't my money I had spent, so I had a duty to finish the film. But yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful film, so we never would have guessed that.
Cheers.
Dan, how about you? What do you like best about filmmaking?
It's funny because I was going to say I'm the exact opposite. I'm actually an editor by trade, but I do love directing, and I love the collaboration of taking, like, this is the first time actually that I hadn't written the project, and so that was part of the challenge of taking on the film, was to really be a pure collaborator and be able to take ideas and all these different things and then make it what it needs to, what we talk about, and the tone and all that kind of stuff. And I like the ability to come on set and like just be a part of that and knowing what we're going to do and what we need to get done that day and making our day. So it's the exact opposite, but that's what I enjoy, and I miss it every time I'm not on set. But I still get my fix editing TV shows and doing other stuff, so that's nice. But it's still, I'm actually editing a short film for a friend of mine right now just because I need that narrative fix. So
Dan, I love the post
Sarah,
process. I just want to say that.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Well, you get to sit at home and drink, so there you go.
Sarah, how about you? What do you like?
I'm with Dan. I love the set life. I would have to say the teamwork of filmmaking is just wonderful. My background is in theater and opera directing. I came to film rather recently, actually. And it just something exhilarating about the pacing of being on set, the the countdown to you only have so long to get so much done, or you have no story, you have no choice. And there's something about that exhilaration that I think can lead to really fantastic creative decisions by everyone. And there's something about being one of many, many artists that are absolutely vital to making this happen that just feels wonderful. You know, I love being able to depend on my director of photography, on my writers, on my fabulous actors, and later on, you know, the colorists and anyone else I'm working with. It's just, I really like that feeling of shared ownership of a project that does feel different from my time as a theater and opera director.
Nice. Lance, what about you?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that in a really easy, concise way, because there's something I really love about every part of the process.
Well, Jeffrey answered us in a concise way of drinking the wine during the filmmaking.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I like daydreaming, which is the pre-production process. I like being pragmatic and problem solving, which is production. And then in post-production, I like assembling a puzzle and building something like a sculpture from a lot of little different pieces and trying to figure out how it fits and what it all means. So I think there's something about each part of it that appeals to a different side of me. And what's so great about filmmaking is that it has so many different elements to it and so many different parts of your brain and so many different stages that it really gets to kind of flex all of the things that you're interested in. And you can be very solitary and you can be incredibly collaborative. It really depends on where you are in the process. So I think I really like that about it, is it's never the same.
What advice would you give to somebody wanting to start off as a filmmaker in any aspect of filmmaking? What would you say to somebody?
I would say watch a lot of movies, and not just movies that you like and are interested in, but really kind of like dive deep and watch weird movies, things that you wouldn't normally think that you might enjoy. Read about the history of cinema, educate yourself, and that'll lead to a kind of deeper understanding of the medium and what it's capable of doing.
Dan, how about you? What would you give as advice to someone?
You know, it's funny. It's like I was just thinking about that while he was saying that, and like you know, the process has changed over the years for me, because I've actually shot a feature back in 2008, and it's changed so much since then. And it's like you know, production wise, you have so much more things and toys and tools that are cheaper and easier, and you just got to figure out, like, you know, how to use all that stuff. So what I would tell somebody is like, if you're going to do it, go write it and go make it, and then go write it and make your mistakes, and go write it and make it and make your mistakes. And don't worry about how good or how bad it is, because eventually, if you keep at it, it'll eventually get good, hopefully. But like, I think it's about just doing it and making your mistakes, because all of my whatever has come out like now is the good has always been from all the mistakes I've made in the past.
You're right about the technology has truly changed. Last fall, we did a fundraiser to help celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and we showed a film from each of the 10 years. And going back to 2011, the technology and the tools are so different to what they are now. We even think back, you know, we had to have people submit their films on DVDs, you know, and now it's all on over the internet. You get it. So yeah. Sarah, how about you? I know you're fairly new to this, so what have you learned, or what advice was given to you if you're not sure what to give to someone else?
Oh, I've got you. Dan and I are still on the same wavelength. It's just about making things. Same advice my mentors gave me when I graduated from theater school with a passion for film, which was very convenient, which was just go make things. Get your friends together and start creating content. You will not only gain skill, but you might start to identify what it is you actually want to be making. And I think that's just as important.
Good. Well, Jeffrey, I've saved you for last because I think with you, I think it's all about the wine. So make sure you have plenty of wine. Is that what you tell a new filmmaker?
Yeah, definitely stuck up on the booze. But I would say, like, understand and accept that what you might be best at is not what you want to do, and pay your rent with what you're best at, and study the hell out of what you actually want to be good at, because they're not often the same thing. And it's very lucky when they are the same thing. And in my case, they're not. And so I had to kind of learn that the hard way. And I would say it hurt my career actually early on, because I was so obstinate about wanting to just be a writer that I turned my back on producing. And then when I accepted producing, suddenly I can afford my rent. And now I've actually become a better writer because I've had more time and money to spend on studying writing. So know that they might not align initially, and then spend your career trying to get them aligned.
Well, I'm sure there's also, you think you're starting off liking something, and along the way you learn of something you had no idea about. You like it even better too.
Yeah. I started off in post-production sound, and I loved it. And so I can go back if I need to, but it was just kind of one of those steps along the way of where I'm at now. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just because it's like, I always say I'm an editor stuck in a director's body. So it's just like, with that as my paying the bills and all the other stuff. But at the same time, I still learn a ton. Every project I do, every show I do, everything I do, and I see it. Like I even noticed it when I was shooting the garage about like I trusted what we needed, and I did half the amount of setups that I would have done on the last project. So it was like, you're always learning from the things that you don't think you're learning from. So like we all agree, I think, is just keep doing it.
Don't fight your skill set. I know a director who is a really good editor, and he refuses to edit because I want to be a director. And guess what? He's not directing either. And it's like, understand that the steps we take are not very clear cut. So, yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, for being here. Thank you to our viewers for watching with us and learning and participating in the 10-year anniversary of the McMinnville Short Film Festival. I wish we could all keep talking about your films. This is the hardest part about the virtual festivals, is we can't now go off to our areas and keep talking about films. We will be returning in 2022. That's our goal. So make sure you check the schedule. There are still films to be watched, and join us February 28th at 5 p.m. for our live award ceremony. It's going to be a lot of fun. See if your films are the ones that are going to be named the winners this year. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us, guys. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.